There is a silence beneath all silences, a hidden pulse that beats not in the chest, but in the center of existence itself. This silence, vast, knowing, unshaken, is where the voice of Thoth once echoed with crystalline clarity. Before time calcified into clocks and consciousness chained itself to flesh, there was a memory not of man but of solar memories stored not in neurons but in symbols and stars. And from that memory rises Thoth, the Atlantean scribe, the lord of measure and balance, the architect of mind itself. To speak of what happens when we die is to walk the line between myth and marrow, between the ancient libraries lost beneath sand and the questions whispered by every soul in the solitude of night. It is not simply a matter of curiosity, it is the primal ache that has haunted our species since we first learned to bury the dead with offerings. In that act of reverence lies the core suspicion. Death is not an end but a veil, and who better to part the veil than Thoth, the divine scribe whose words do not merely explain, they awaken. Known in Chem as Jehuti, Thoth was the keeper of sacred geometry, the voice behind hieroglyphs, the emissary of cosmic order. He was never truly mortal, and yet he spoke in forms man could grasp. His teachings were not meant only for priests cloaked in linen or initiates behind temple walls. They were mirrors held to the soul, encoded maps for those willing to remember. But much has been forgotten. In our modern era, where death is hidden behind hospital curtains and sanitized obituaries, we have lost the language of transition. We treat death like a malfunction, an error in the code of life, rather than what Thoth once revealed it to be, a passage, a decoding, a return. And this forgetting has cost us dearly. In forgetting what it means to die, we have forgotten what it means to live. We grasp at shallow pleasures, build empires on sand, and name illusions as truth, all because we fear the final breath. Yet Thoth taught that there is no final breath. According to his long-lost fragments, some echoed in the emerald tablets, others hidden beneath layers of myth and silence, death is not destruction. It is translation. The soul, he taught, is not extinguished but transmuted. Consciousness does not vanish into the void, it steps through thresholds, guided by laws as intricate as the architecture of a snowflake or the orbit of the stars. Imagine, if you will, the soul as a prism of light, while in the body, that light is refracted, colored by experiences, traumas, and beliefs. But when the body falls away, the light is drawn back to its source through chambers, through gates, through reckonings, not of punishment, but of memory. An alignment, weighing of the heart, is not a metaphor, it is a metaphysical inevitability. The soul carries weight not of mass, but of resonance, and here lies the forgotten truth that burns beneath the dust of time. The afterlife is not merely a place, it is a process, a sorting, a harmonization, a reunion with a vibrational blueprint of the cosmos. Thoth, ever the mathematician of the soul, encoded these truths not in warnings but in riddles, because only the seeking mind can unlock the door. Our ancestors knew this. The pyramid texts whisper it. The Book of Coming Forth by Day hints at it in veiled symbols. Even Plato's myth of Ur is an echo of this arcane knowing. But over centuries, clarity was shrouded in dogma, and the teachings of Thoth, deliberately hidden by some, forgotten by most, faded into obscurity. Now fragments remain like broken shards of a once pristine mirror, casting reflections too faint for those who refuse to look beyond the surface of things. But this is not a tale of despair. It is a rekindling, the resurgence of Thoth's teachings. In this time is not coincidence. We stand at a precipice not only globally, but individually. Many are beginning to question the structures, the stories, the sterile narratives we've been fed. They are sensing something ancient stir beneath the statica, hunger for truth not written in textbooks, but encoded in the stars. And so, the forgotten teachings of Thoth re-emerge not as mysticism for us keepists, but as sacred instruction for those daring enough to pierce the veil with their inner eye. What happens when we die is not some external spectacle. It is the most intimate, profound journey a being can undertake. And Thoth, in his ageless wisdom, left behind the blueprint not as dogma but as a key dot to grasp it. We must not just read, we must remember. We must let language fall away into symbol, let reason dissolve into intuition, and let fear be transmuted into gnosis. Only then can we begin to understand not just death, but the life before and the life beyond. On the chapters that follow, we will walk step by step through the luminous architecture Thoth once revealed. We will explore the illusions that bind us, the symbols that speak across dimensions, and the implications this has, not just for death but for the way we awaken, the way we choose, the way we are. And so, dear seeker, welcome. The scroll is unfurling. The gate is opening. The voice of Thoth, long buried in sand and silence, calls again. To walk the labyrinth of Thoth's wisdom is to remember that what we call reality is only one octave in a grander scale of being. Beneath the veil of mortality lies a harmonic structure where the soul vibrates between densities, slipping through layers of consciousness like a bead of light passing through water and air. In this space, neither wholly physical nor entirely immaterial, Thoth's teachings provide not merely poetic allegory, but a metaphysical roadmap etched in symbols, geometry, and energetic law. At the heart of his message is the assertion that Consciousness is not generated by the body but housed within it, much like light contained by a lantern. The body is the vessel, the soul, the flame. When death occurs, it is not the extinguishing of light, but the shattering of the lantern. The flame remains, dancing upward, no longer bound by the dense shell of flesh and bone. This is no New Age fantasy, but a truth echoed in near-death accounts, ancient spiritual texts, and the secret schools of initiation long hidden from public view. Thoth's primary concern, then, is not with the cessation of life, but with its continuation, its transformation. He speaks of the duat, the intermediate realm between worlds. This is not heaven or hell as dogma describes it, but a dimension of sorting, reflection, recalibration. A metaphysical echo chamber, where the soul is drawn not to reward or punishment, but to resonance. There is no external judge, no deity weighing sins. Instead, the soul meets its own frequency. If that frequency is heavy with fear, deceit, or fragmentation, it is pulled to lower strata of experience. If light with truth, harmony, and remembrance, it rises. The mechanism is at the very core of Thoth's teachings. He described it not in moralistic terms, but in vibrational law. As above, so below, as within, so without. What you carry inward, you encounter outward. The microcosm of your inner world shapes the macrocosm of your after-death experience. In this way, life itself is the preparation. Every thought, every action, every subtle alignment becomes a thread in the tapestry that determines your trajectory once freed from form. But more than a system of laws, Thoth offered keys to remembrance. The first of these is the principle of Mahat, cosmic balance. To live in Mat is not merely to be good in a moral sense, but to be true to oneself, to others, and to the universe. Integrity becomes a vibrational shield. Harmony becomes a map, and when the heart is weighed against the feather of Mat, as the ancient myth goes, it is not about judgment, it is about correspondence. The heart seat of the soul's accumulated essence must be light enough to rise. Another core teaching is that of becoming the observer. Thoth urges us to detach from identification with form, role, and ego. The ego, he warns, is a temporal mask useful in the realm of matter, but a liability beyond it. If one dies still tethered to identity named job culture, persona, then the soul becomes confused, lost in astral echoes, unsure of its direction. But if one dies aware of being awareness itself, that soul moves swiftly, clearly, like a river. Returning to its source, Thoth also speaks of the QA and Ba, energetic aspects of the human essence. The QA is the vital double, the energetic blueprint of the body, while the Ba is the mobile soul, capable of flight between dimensions. At death, these two forces separate. If the individual has cultivated awareness, coherence, and spiritual strength during life, the BA retains sovereignty. It is able to navigate the realms beyond death consciously. But if the Ba is weakened through trauma, delusion, or unconsciousness, it becomes fragmented, pulled into cycles of reincarnation, or entropic dissolution. Here lies another startling element of Thoth's teaching. Death does not guarantee liberation. This is perhaps the most no BS aspect of his doctrine. Simply dying does not mean awakening. Many souls, he says, remain asleep even after the body perishes. They linger in dreamlike states, trapped in astral feedback loops, mistaking illusion for reality. Some don't even realize they've died. So embedded are they in the narratives of form. Others are pulled back into incarnation swiftly, not as punishment, but as a natural magnetic pull to unresolved patterns. Only those who achieve lucidity, who cultivate the inner eye and anchor themselves in truth, are able to consciously transition. These are the initiates, the remembrancers, the ones who pass through the gates with awareness intact. And what they find, Thoth claims, is a continuum of consciousness so profound, so ordered and sublime, that words can only hint at its magnitude. Here, the soul is given a choice: to rest, to merge, or to return with wisdom. Another critical theme Thoth reveals is time as illusion. From the soul's perspective, time is not linear. The past and future collapse into spirals, where all lives influence one another across dimensions. Thus, what we resolve now, what we forgive, understand, and heal echoes both backward and forward. Death does not break this loop. It simply changes the lens. In Thoth's view, each life is a stanza in an eternal poem, and death is the white space between verses. And finally, Thoth reminds us that death is initiation. The ancient mystery schools modeled their teachings on this premise. Ritual death, symbolic burial, and spiritual resurrection were not mere theatrics, they were training for the real thing. Initiates learn to let go of identity, confront the shadow, and emerge as luminous beings, so that when death finally came, it found them ready, conscious, and fearless. These, then, are the pillars of the forgotten teaching: that death is not a finale, but a portal; that the afterlife is a reflection, not a reward; and that liberation lies not in escape, but in remembrance. To die well, we must live well, not in terms of wealth or success, but in alignment, clarity, and sovereignty of soul. And Thoth's voice, etched in timeless symbols and whispers between stars, calls us to remember not just what happens when we die, but why we live at all. Symbols are the language of eternity. They speak in silence, bypassing logic and embedding themselves directly into the root system of the soul. Thoth knew this better than any scribe, any priest, any philosopher who came after him. Where others wrote laws, he etched mysteries. Where others taught by explanation, he taught through archetype, through metaphor, through alchemical parables encoded in temples, stars, and dreams. If one hopes to understand what truly happens when we die, one must stop trying to understand and begin to see. Thoth's narratives were never meant for the surface mind. They are living myths, fractal stories with multiple layers, spiraling inward toward gnosis. In these deeper symbolic frames, death ceases to be a conclusion and becomes instead a rite of passage, a ceremonial unfolding that strips away illusion until only essence remains. One of the most enduring symbolic structures Thoth left us is the myth of the weighing of the heart. It is, on the surface, a story from the Egyptian Book of the Dead, Anubis guiding the soul, Thoth recording the verdict, and the heart placed on a scale against the feather of Mat. If the heart is heavier, the soul is devoured by Ammit, the devourer of the unworthy. But deeper still, this myth is not about punishment, it is about density. The heart represents the soul's energetic signature, shaped by all thoughts, actions, regrets, and attachments. The feather represents pure cosmic harmony, the zero-point field of truth. What makes the heart heavy? Not sin in the moral sense, but misalignment, resentment, fear, the clinging to false identity, the refusal to see oneself. In this symbolic ritual, the soul is not judged by gods, but by the very frequency it has chosen to inhabit. The myth reveals that you cannot fake resonance. You can lie to others in life, even to yourself. But death is the realm where truth is no longer optional. You vibrate what you are, and the scale will not lie. Another forgotten allegory lies in the geometry of the pyramid. Beyond being a tomb or monument, the pyramid is a symbolic model of ascension. Its base represents the material world, the four corners of earth, water, fire, and air. The ascent narrows not just physically but spiritually, requiring focus, refinement, and surrender. The top where all points converge into one is the apex of consciousness, the seat of the soul's return to source. To pass through death is to make this climb. If one remains anchored to the base god in materiality, they are bound to return. But if one can rise, step by invisible step, shedding density with every level, they emerge into unity. Thoth also spoke, in veiled tones, of the serpent and the staff. This symbol, seen in the Caduceus, is not only a medical emblem, it is a map of soul alchemy. The twin serpents represent the dual currents of energy, life and death, light and shadow, Ida and Pingala. The staff is the spine, the central channel, the axis mundi that bridges the above and below. Death, in this metaphor, is not a fall, it is a coil, a spiral journey that brings the energy of the soul back into its source field. Those who master the serpent within, who integrate polarities, do not fear death, they ride it, they rise through it. And then there is the boat of Ra, the solar bark that sails through the underworld each night. In this narrative, rather, divine light travels through darkness, facing trials, shadows, and chaos serpents, only to rise again as the dawn. This is not just a myth of the sun, it is the map of the soul's nocturnal voyage beyond the body. The darkness of death is not annihilation, it is incubation. The soul must pass through its own shadow, confront the unresolved, and battle the chaos it once ignored. Only by doing so does it earn its return, not to earth, but to truth. These narratives reveal a sobering truth. Death does not free you from yourself, it reveals you to yourself. It strips away the masks and exposes the essence, raw and radiant, flawed and luminous. The myths Thoth left are not fantasies, they are coded blueprints. The same structure seen in the underworld journey is echoed in the hero's journey of all great mythologies: departure, initiation, return. To die is to depart from the world of form, to be initiated into the formless. And if the soul chooses to return with wisdom, another potent symbol in Thoth's corpus is the mirror hall. It is said that, after death, the soul enters a hall, lined with mirrors, not mirrors made of glass, but reflective fields of consciousness. In each, the soul sees its life not as memory, but as experience felt from all angles. Every joy is felt fully, but so is every wound inflicted, every lie told, every moment of love ignored. It is not judgment, it is empathy. This mirror stage, this is not about guilt or praise, it is about full awareness. Only through full witnessing can the soul become whole again, and only the whole can pass on. And then, curiously, there is silence. In many of Thoth's symbolic teachings, the final stage after the tests, after the mirrors, after the voyage is stillness, a wordless, formless presence. This silence is not emptiness, it is completion. It is the field beyond opposites, where the soul remembers its origin before identity, before matter, before time. It is the same silence that speaks in meditation, in the moment between thoughts, in the pause between breath and breath. To know this silence while alive is to die consciously. To die into it unaware is to sleep. And so Thoth taught that the highest goal is not simply to pass through death but to wake up within it. All of these symbolic narratives, be they myth, metaphor, or cosmic code, point to one sacred reality. You are already what you seek. Death is not the portal to knowledge. It is the mirror of your existing state. The journey beyond this world is not something that begins when the heart stops beating. It begins now. Every moment of presence, of truth, of stillness, is a rehearsal, a step, a star on the map. Home. In truth, Thoth's greatest message is not about death, it's about remembering that you were never separate from the infinite. Death merely reminds you of what life has tried so hard to make you forget. It is tempting to treat death as a distant horizon, a later problem, a mysterious gate we'll deal with when the sands finally slip through the hourglass. But Thoth's teachings shatter this illusion. They bring the end close, not as a warning, but as an invitation. They challenge us to live not in fear of death, but in intimacy with it, to walk beside it, not behind it. For when we do, life itself begins to transform. Imagine moving through the world not as a being racing against time, but as a soul already anchored in the timeless. This is the practical implication of Thoth's death teachings. They are not for the dead, they are for the living, meant to be practiced in the body, in the marketplace, in the quiet of your home and the heat of your trials. The myths and metaphysics are the scaffolding. The real temple is built through choices, attention, presence, integration. Thoth teaches that awareness is the soul's compass. When cultivated deeply, it grants the soul sovereignty in both life and death. But awareness is not a passive gaze, it is a disciplined state, a conscious act of alignment. To remember you are awareness, not just a thinker, a feeler, a doer, is to stand in the eye of the storm, untouched. This clarity begins not in great revelations, but in the small pivots, noticing your reactions before they become habits, observing your stories before they calcify into beliefs, catching the self mid-sleepwalk and choosing instead to wake up. Death, after all, is not something that happens once. It is something we are meant to rehearse. When you let go of an old belief that defined you, that's a death. When you forgive someone you swore you never would, that's a death. When you dissolve a toxic attachment or release a lifelong fear, you are practicing the art of dying well. You are rehearsing for the day when the body follows suit. This is not a grim exercise. It is a liberation. In fact, Thoth insisted that those who master death become fearless in life. They no longer grip at permanence. They do not panic when structures dissolve, when relationships shift, when the old self falls away. They understand these are initiations, not losses. They begin to see the world not as a fixed set of roles, but as a stage for transformation. Everything becomes meaningful not because it lasts forever, but because it doesn't. And so the initiate, the modern seeker of Thoth's truth, begins to live in alignment with eternal laws rather than fleeting trends. They seek coherence over comfort, stillness over stimulation, truth over popularity. And slowly, the soul's energy becomes refined, clear light. In Thoth's language, this means that when death does come, the soul is not dragged, but carried, not confused, but lucid. Another practical thread of this teaching is the understanding of resonance. If what awaits us beyond death is a field that matches our frequency, then we are right now tuning that frequency with every word, every thought, every intention. So the question becomes, what am I becoming a match for? Are we cultivating peace or addiction to conflict? Are we living from inner authority or outsourcing our truth to the crowd? Are we facing our shadows or projecting them onto others? To embody Thoth's forgotten wisdom is to become a mirror to yourself while you still have time to polish the glass. It means owning every fragment of your being and choosing to harmonize rather than divide. In relationships, this might look like radical honesty with others, but especially with yourself. In work, it might look like no longer chasing empty status, but aligning with your soul's true contribution. In the body, it means treating it not as a random collection of matter, but as a temple, temporary, yes, but sacred in its role as the soul's current vehicle. There is also the understanding of conscious closure. Thoth's view of death asks us to complete things, to tie the threads, to bless the past and unhook from it. This isn't just psychological advice, it's energetic hygiene. Unfinished emotional loops, grudges, regrets, these become weights that bind the soul after death. Learning to end cycles cleanly, to exit with grace rather than escape, is a form of spiritual maturity. So the seeker begins to ask, what in my life is still entangled? What needs forgiving, finishing, or blessing? Thoth's teachings also implied that service, offering your light to others, is a spiritual accelerant. When you live for more than yourself, you shift out of ego's gravitational pull. You enter into the current of cosmic purpose. This doesn't mean martyrdom or self-sacrifice. It means remembering that the soul grows not only through self-work but through contribution. When you help another remember who they are, it echoes, and that echo becomes part of your resonance. And perhaps most transformative of all is the practice of presence. To be fully here, not in theory, but in breath, in body, in now, is to begin the art of eternal living. The past no longer claws at you. The future no longer holds you hostage. Presence dissolves time, and in this sacred now, death loses its teeth. It becomes just another threshold. Thoth would not have us fear the threshold. He would have us walk toward it with eyes open, heart light, and soul already ascending. He would remind us that all of life is a preparation, not in the anxious sense of cramming for a test, but in the sacred sense of composing a song. The music of your life, the frequency of your choices, becomes the vibration that carries you home. This is not metaphor, it is law. It is architecture. It is truth veiled in symbol and revealed through action. And so, if you wish to live fully, study death not morbidly, but courageously. Let it sharpen your choices. Let it clarify what matters. Let it strip away the noise and return you to what is essential. Let it teach you how to die now, so that when the moment comes, you do not collapse in fear but rise in remembrance. So we arrive, as all seekers do, at the edge of the final veil. Not the veil of death, but the veil of forgetting. It is thinner than we think. Sometimes it shimmers in dreams, sometimes in silence, sometimes in the strange déjà vu that visits, when truth brushes too close to be denied. And if the forgotten teachings of Thoth have done anything, it is this: they have pulled back the curtain, if only a little, to reveal not an end but a mirror in which we glimpse not who we think we are, but who we have always been. This journey has never been about death. Not really. It is about identity. It is about shedding illusions so thoroughly, so reverently, that when the body finally falls away, the soul does not panic. It simply continues fluid, aware, lucid. The myths of the scales, the pyramids, the serpent and the staff, the mirror, halls, the boat of Ra, they are not dusty relics of ancient imagination. They are precise symbolic instruments for decoding the soul's passage. And if you followed them closely, you know by now, you were never meant to fear death. You were meant to master it, not by escaping it, not by denying its approach, but by walking through it in full remembrance. To live like this is radical. It requires courage, not just in the face of the unknown, but in the face of your own masks. It means dismantling the false self brick by brick, even when doing so feels like annihilation. And yet, beneath each mask is not emptiness but clarity, stillness, the divine pattern Thoth inscribed in the very essence of your being. You are not here to become divine. You are here to remember that you are and always have been divinity, clothed in bone and breath. This is the final message of the forgotten teachings. You do not go anywhere when you die. You simply stop playing pretend. The veil lifts, and what you see is you, not the small you, not the identity constructed of years and names and preferences, but the real you, the spark, the soul, the silence behind the thoughts. So, what does this mean for today, for this moment in your living life? It means you are not powerless. You are not waiting for heaven, or hell, or some final verdict. You are already sculpting the afterlife in the clay of your choices. Every act of forgiveness, every moment of awareness, every time you choose truth over comfort, you are tuning your soul. You are lightening the heart. You are making yourself known to the scale that awaits not in judgment, but in reflection. This is the true immortality Thoth spoke of, not the denial of death, but the transcendence of fear, not through fantasy, but through the radical act of becoming real. So live. Live in full awareness that the soul does not end, that the story goes on. Let that knowing not lull you into passivity, but ignite you into presence. You were not put here to sleep through your incarnation. You were not meant to fill the hours with noise and call it purpose. You are here to remember, and remembering is not a thought, it is a fire. Let this fire guide you. Let it burn through the falsehoods you've inherited about what death is, about who you are, about where this all ends. Let it illuminate your daily life not with lofty detachment, but with sacred intimacy. Make your relationships altars. Let your words be spells of alignment. Let your work serve not ego but essence. Speak as if your voice echoes into eternity, because it does. And when the moment of death arrives, as it will for each of us, may you meet it not as a stranger but as an old companion. May you rise into that other world with clarity, not confusion, with lightness, not baggage, with gratitude, not regret, because you have already died many times, because you have already remembered what matters, because you have already become what you always were. Thoth did not want worshippers, he wanted awakeners. And now, you stand on the precipice of such awakening, not as a concept, but as a call. Will you heed it? Will you die daily, so that when death finally comes it finds nothing left to take? Will you burn away the lies, so that only truth remains? Will you walk the rest of your life knowing it is not leading to death but emerging from it? This is the great return, the final initiation. You are not the body. You are not the mind. You are not the mind. You are not even the name you answer to. You are awareness, flowing. You are the breath behind the form. You are the one who never began and who will never end. So remember, and live accordingly.